Assalamu alaikum, guys. Welcome to this very, very important episode of Smile to Jannah.
It's important because the champ is in it. Huh? It's important because I'm in it. It's not because you have just said it's important. People need to understand the levels in this game. Oh, thank you very much.
Smile to Jannah.
This is in secondary schools. We've had parents complaining. We've had students complaining that their RE teachers are mostly agnostic and atheist. They are using those sessions to forward their propaganda or their... How do you explain atheism? Like it's something with corrigible principles.
Yes.
Something that's unproven from first principles.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Something that, let's just say, is illogical to say the least. It's a paradox in itself.
You're just using big words now, aren't you?
I am.
A slobberdigullion, timorous, pusillanimous, ultracrepidarian, dilettante.
But are they correct though?
If they're coming from your mouth, then they're not correct.
A call an ambulance! The first thing we would say before we even delve into some of the common questions, and I would say this video needs to be spread to all these students, all these parents, because alhamdulillah, you know, we are experienced hijab more so, much more so than me. So I'm going to posit these questions to him. And first thing you need to do, if this is happening with your RE teacher, they should not be doing this sort of stuff. They shouldn't be biased. Yeah, and the parent should come together, complain, have a meeting with the head teacher. Let's jump into it. Number one, evidence of God.
God is instinctively realized, and I think most neuroscientific research has shown that now. Like we quote research from Justin Barrett. I think it's probably the best.
Okay, you said instinctively realized.
Yeah,
so you're talking about instinct. You're talking about something that's innate.
I think we should start with that. I think we should start with the fact that there are some things which are pretty much instinctively realized. We can assert now, based on the evidence of cognitive science, neuropsychology, that young people growing up, babies born as soon as they have been able to kind of perceive the outside world, have been shown to be believing in a higher power.
Okay, so that's from Justin Barrett, University of Oxford, yeah?
Yeah.
All right.
So that's one thing. The other thing is that there's a range of different evidences and arguments that can be used. I think if we're talking about, for me personally, if we're talking about young people now, I would use a abbreviated type of the fine-tuning argument, which is connected to the contingency argument, which I've obviously written a book about. How would I do that? Because the contingency argument might be a bit of a mouthful and a bit difficult for young people. So I'll just say this.
I'm going to link a video in the description if you want to know more about the contingency, because he's doing his PhD on that. We have a lot of experience, and mashallah, the contingency is the argument that is flawless.
We think, I personally believe it's the strongest argument. I want to arm young people with 3 fundamental questions. Okay? And these are counter questions that you can ask your teacher and or other colleagues, students in the class. Number 1, why is there something rather than nothing? Okay, or how could it be the case that there is something rather than nothing? Because it is significant that there is something rather than nothing. That something exists rather than nothing exists.
Yeah,
that is something which is clearly significant because it acts as a basis for everything else.
Yes.
The second thing I would put is, I'd say, what are the things that we know about this universe? Okay, we know that this universe exists. Correct. Okay, no problem. We know that this universe has life. Now, based on these points, how do you explain that there is life in this universe? How is it explicable? How is it explainable that there is life in this universe? If one says, well, it's not explicable, that's a cop-out. That's not an answer to the question. The third thing is then, what is the best explanation for there to be life in this universe? So here's questions that we're putting forward. They're not necessarily arguments so far.
Okay.
Because a question really cannot be wrong. It can have a wrong presupposition, but it can't have a wrong question. So by asking the question, we are reframing the discourse here.
And you're also putting yourself in the driving seat as well.
We're on the driving seat. We're on the driving seat.
Yeah.
Of the options that you have, what are the best options for the explanation of existence rather than non-existence, A, and B, life rather than non-life in the universe. Now, in order for the universe to have life rather than non-life, it has to be finely tuned in a certain way. Now, most atheists actually agree with this. They call this the fine-tuning of the universe. And they talk about gravitational constant, the electromagnetic constant, all these kind of things, that they're fine-tuned in a certain way. I'm not even talking about all of that. I'm just saying that it's a fact that the universe is uniform, stable, and regular. These are three things about the universe, such that science can be done in the first place. Therefore, the universe is regular, uniform, and stable enough to be fine-tuned for life to exist in the universe. What explains this? There are three options. Option one, that nothing explains this. So nothing created the universe, nothing created something, which is an impossible option, because we say from nothing, nothing comes. It's impossible. Yeah? We say something explains this. This something is weak, dependent, and unintelligent. But then how do you explain the fact that the universe is fine-tuned and that itself is dependent upon something which is dependent? Problematic, yeah? So we're saying the third option is that this thing is necessary, which means everything depends upon it, and it depends upon, it's independent, and it has knowledge. So of the three options in this trichotomy, which of the three makes most sense? You can choose yourself. If you think that there is a fourth option, please present it.
Yeah.
If there is no fourth option, then choose the right answer, or forever hold your peace. It's a very clever way of cornering somebody, because for them to say that the universe came from nothing, they'd have to be committing all kinds of logical fallacies, that the universe depends on another universe which is dependent. Then we have the problems of the infinite regress. We have all kinds of issues. Therefore, we need something which everything depends upon and it depends upon nothing, but which also has intelligence. But is it only have intelligence and necessity, or does it also have the ability to change the situation? If we say it has the ability to change the situation because the world is changing and the universe is changing, that must mean it's also got ability. So it has power. Because the universe has power inside of it, it requires a generator. And so you can already extract what we refer to as the classical attributes of God.
So number two, so how do you know that the Prophet ﷺ existed and was who he said he was?
Okay.
Yeah, so...
how would you answer this?
The Prophet ﷺ is somebody whose existence can be verified by non-Muslims, yeah, dated back to that time with documents that have been dated to that time, whether it's carbon dated or any other way. Yeah. So the first one is 7th century. It's called the Nestorian Chronicle. Number two is called the Doctrina Jacobi Nuper Baptizati, and the third one is Bishop Sabius of the House of Bagratunis. Yeah, so these are three sources. You can find these in a book by Abu Zakaria called Forbidden Prophecies.
I think the strongest thing as well is the Quran itself. I mean, it mentions the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. From whence did it come? You know, and you've got obviously all these Sahaba, the Tabain, Atba' Tabain, all these companions, the wives of the prophets. There's very solid historical existence of all of these things. The Kaaba itself, coins that date back to the Umayyad period, which has the name Muhammad on it. You know, all kinds of things where Islam proliferated in the Arabian Peninsula, in all different types of place, and where the mention of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was everywhere. I think the reason why a lot of kind of Orientalist, and this is what it is, bro. I mean, Orientalist, Eurocentric scholars and historians, revisionists, they're called revisionists, they don't accept the existence of the Prophet Muhammad, which is a very small minority of people, if negligible to say the least, is because they don't accept the Arab script. They don't accept historical records written in anything other than the white man's languages. Yeah, that's why they'll rubbish African history. They'll rubbish any type of oral history. They'll rubbish Middle Eastern history. They may even rubbish Chinese history, because if it's not written in the handwriting and in the language and the preferred methods of the white man, they don't accept it. So we're not here to placate to these individuals. And I think sometimes it's definitely good to have these sources, which are Roman sources, really, non-Muslim, extra Quranic sources, but do we need all of them anyway?
We don't. All right, so there's loads of other books. You're mentioning coins and stuff like that. There's one book that I was looking at by Sean Anthony, in which he actually documents the coins as well, and he documents certain manuscripts that they found that has the Hijrah on it. Yeah, it's dated with the Islamic calendar of the Hijrah. Now, there's many presuppositions you can take. Number one, the fact that you've got documents that are dating to that time. Number two, the fact that the Hijrah took place. If the Hijrah took place, then of course you're verifying the presence of firstly Umar radiallahu an, then secondly Abu Bakr and the Prophet. So again, there's other things.
I mean, I don't think historians doubt that. I mean, how did Jerusalem get conquered?
Yeah.
The thing is, there's demographic details here.
Yeah.
Like Jerusalem fell to the Muslim Empire, and that was under the time of Umar ibn Khattab. Unless you want to say that Jerusalem didn't fall, it didn't happen in Umar ibn Khattab's time, and that such a man didn't exist. But then, how do you explain the existence of Muslims in Jerusalem today? How do you explain the fact that Islam proliferates to these places? It's a pathetic and appalling argument that really is carries no weight whatsoever. But what I find really interesting, bro, more interesting than potentially all I've just mentioned, is that you'll find people that attack the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm not going to mention their names. Yeah. There are people who attack the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and other places they say he didn't exist. So if he didn't exist, then why are you attacking him? It's like attacking the fairy monster, or what do you call it? The
boogeyman.
The boogeyman.
Yeah.
You know, or the Hulk or something, which is me. But
wow. But you're Bruce Banner, isn't it?
Who's that again, bro?
He's the skinny one that turns into the Hulk.
Are you the Joker?
You're damn right. Okay. So, talking about the veracity of the Prophet, this is a technique that we use in Speaker's Corner, which is to talk about the prophecies of the Prophet. Yeah, there's a book by, again, Abu Zakaria, Forbidden Prophecies, where it goes through other people that have made prophecies, like the likes of Nostradamus, the Mayans, the Qi Ching or whatever they are. With these people, their prophecies are very vague. There's always explanation to how they could have known. Things don't add up. But the Prophet's prophecies, all of them have hit the nail on the head. In fact, you mentioned one of C.S. Lewis.
It's called the Olivet Discourse.
Yeah.
And it implies that the end of the world is going to be imminent.
Yeah.
And so C.S. Lewis looked at that verse and he said, and C.S. Lewis, for those who don't know, he's like one of the top scholars in Christian history. And he said that it's the most embarrassing verse in the Bible because it didn't come true. That's
a high-level scholar, isn't it?
Very high-level scholar. Probably top 5 in the last 100 years.
With regards to the veracity of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his claim to be a prophet, would you say what else would you say other than prophecies?
Well, the way I divide it is into necessary and sufficient conditions.
Yeah.
So necessary conditions are conditions which, if they are not there, then the person or the claimant is nullified from the very beginning.
Okay.
And things which are necessary is the preservation of the text. If we don't have a preserved Quran, which is the same Quran which has been emitted to the people of that time, the end user, and we have a different type of Quran, or has been differences have been put in or something like that, the narrative has been changed or whatever it may be, then it means that we have different access to guidance, that the first people have different access to guidance to the people that come afterwards. And if it's meant to be a universal religion, this is a real problem. It's a catastrophe, in fact. And this is what we have seen in the biblical discourse. There are literal verses. There are 3 that bear the witness in heaven, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and all these 3 are one, which have literally been seen as forgeries in the biblical discourse and been taken out by other Bibles. There is no example of that at all of the Quran. Nothing like that. For 1,400 years, the Quran, with all of its qira'at and all of its recitational formats, have been read in exactly the same way for 1,400 years, and that's a fact. The narrative has not changed. We have not seen verses come in and out like that. There's no comparison between it and the biblical discourse at all, and that's the first thing. So really, we will say that on the first instance, Islam, it passes the test for necessary condition, and Christianity fails. And Judaism does as well. And so does, to be honest with you, Hinduism. Almost all the religion, just on this fact, fail except for Islam. Almost all of them. The only ones which can be contenders are religions which are not that ancient. 200-300-year-old religions or something like that. So that's the first thing you've got. The second thing you've got, so this is a necessary condition. Another necessary condition is that there cannot be a theological contradiction in the religion, or B, contradictions within the text itself. Because if there's a theological contradiction, like the Trinity, for example, then how are we meant to believe in something which is unintelligible in the first instance?
Yeah.
Something which is unreasonable in the first instance. So it can't be something like, I believe that the cow is God or the man is God. Yeah, because that already shows is false religion.
Yeah.
So Islam passes that test because, as we've shown, the proposition of one God is something which is very clear. And the Quran is the only religious book which even insinuates that contradiction is something which is a necessary condition of a religion. It says, لو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا. If it was from other than God, they would have found in it many contradictions. Meaning, a book from God is not meant to have many contradictions. I had a recent discussion with, what's his name? What's his name? Bar Ehrman. And he was like, well, a phone book doesn't have many contradictions. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
A phone book doesn't have many contradictions. A phone book is not making claims about nature, psychology, spirituality, eschatology, or anything like that. It's not making any claims about anything like that at all. لو كان من عند غير الله. If it was from other than God, it would have found many contradictions. A phone book doesn't make claims about the things that Quran is making claims about. And in addition to that, the phone book doesn't claim to be divine. And thirdly, we're not even saying that's a sufficient condition. We're saying it's only a necessary one. And that's what I tried to explain to him. But anyway, a necessary condition means a condition which must be in place in order for the thing to be true. And then you have now sufficient conditions. So just to summarize, it has to be preserved. It cannot be contradictory in its theology or in its script. And it must, so in other words, it cannot have any contradictions. And we say now, if we look at the sufficient conditions, we know what they are. Things like prophecies, things like historical accuracies, things like linguistic, and this is probably the most marvelous thing of all, the impeccable language of the Quran, which descopes everything that has ever been known at that time in the Arabic speaking world. It's something which all the people, even those who are most antithetical to the Islamic discourse, like Al-Walid ibn Mughira, had to admit this is not like Sha'r, it's not the Arabic poetry, it's not like Kohen al-Arab, it's not like the Saj'a or any of these things that existed at the time. It's not any like that at all. It descopes all of that, and it's marvelous to the extent to which people accused it of being magic. The fact that people accused the Quran of being magic is indicative of the fact that they considered it to be something supernatural. That's the truth. The language was so marvelous, the structure was so precise that they considered it to be something which is supernatural. That's what they considered it. They don't want to explain how do you explain this like that, and the use of languages like this and the structures are like that.
So bear in mind, we're talking about the Prophet, and then you're talking about necessary and sufficient conditions. These are mostly of the Quran.
Yeah, well, if the Quran is true, ipso facto the Prophet is true, because he came and said this is from God.
Okay.
So one of the things that we're saying is that,
so you're saying there's an overlap when answering about the Prophet's validity or the Quran's validity. You're saying they can be
there is an overlap, and not only that, one proves the other and the other proves one.
Okay.
So in other words, it's kind of like symbiotic here.
Okay.
If you can prove that the Quran is from God, and or that you can prove that the Prophet is a prophet, then both of them entail the other, basically. In the Quran indicates this in Surah Al-Bayyinah. It says, لم يكن الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب والمشركين منفكين حتى تأتيهم البينة رسول من الله يتلو صحفا مطهرة. That the Prophet himself basically is a bayyinah, is an evidence. He himself is an evidence. His life is an evidence. His sincerity is an evidence. How he lived was an evidence. I mean, just the fact, just give you one piece of it, easy one. And there's so many things I can mention, but I'll just keep mentioning one thing. A man who consistently prays anything between half the night and anything between half the night or a little bit below that, for example, consistently prays that many hours. How are we talking? 3 hours, 4 hours? If you don't believe in what you believe, why would you do that to yourself? Just one thing about his life. All his wives testified to the fact that he spent half the, even the Quran, نصفه أو انقص منه قليلا أو زد عليه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا, that you spend نصفه, half the night praying, أو انقص منه قليلا, or a little bit less than half, أو زد عليه, or even more than half, ورتل القرآن ترتيلا, and you read the Quran slowly. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ lived a life where he put himself in danger. He done battles where he was himself in the front line. He was praying half the night. He had 9 wives that he had to manage at the same time. You know, all these difficulties upon difficulties upon difficulties. He lived an impoverished life. He didn't have food and drink for long spells of time.
So you're saying for somebody that wanted wealth and wanted fame and popularity,
yeah, all the motivations are not there.
Yeah,
motivations are not there. He lives the lifestyle. Even Umar ibn Khattab went into his house one time, and he saw him laying on the ground with, you know, in a bad condition. And he said, I'm going to make supplication to God that Allah makes it easier for you. It's Bukhari. And he said, I don't want that. That's for these individuals. He said, look at the people of Rome and look at the people of Persia. He said, that's for them in this world, and for me, it's not like that. So in other words, his aesthetic lifestyle, his humble attitude, his resistance to be materialistic, or his foregoing of the world, all of these things are very clear-cut evidences of his prophethood. That, in addition to all of the aforementioned that we've mentioned, the language, the structure, the prophecies, the history, you know, and his life, and so many other things, okay, it's clear to us that there is evidence for Islam being the truth and the ultimate truth and nothing but the truth.
Okay, what do Muslims believe about the theory of evolution?
Look, the theory of evolution is like many other theories. This Darwinian evolution is not just the only type of evolution. There's Neo-Lamarckian evolution, evolution by genetic engineering. Evolution, there's different types of evolution, so one shouldn't think that Darwinian evolution is the only one. Number one. Number two is, even if we say it is the only one or whatever, right, I will say this candidly: Islam has no problem with 99.9 recurring percent of the theory of evolution. No issue at all with 99.9%. If I told you Islam has no problem with 99.9% recurring of any theory, you'd say that Islam practically allows you to believe in that thing. And that's what I would say about theory of evolution. The one slither, the small thing which Islam does not allow, is belief that human beings were created in any other way than a direct way from God. Why? Because the human being has a specialized narrative in the Quran, and the human being is so far separated from all other species in this world that it's inconceivable that they are even connected to animals in the same way that animals are connected to each other. Human beings have been specialized by God. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. Allah, He created human beings directly. And so this is something we believe is in the narrative of Islam. And if you look at the human condition and compare it to any animal you like, any orangutan or any chimpanzee or any gorilla, yeah, you will find that no matter how close their genes are to ours, you will not bring this animal, this gorilla, okay, and make it do calculus. It's far away from doing calculus. We're talking about whether or not they can hold tools or whatever, let alone calculus, let alone civilization, let alone language, let alone communication and leaving things behind, let alone morality, with all due respect. You can compare a gorilla with a bear. You can't you can compare it with a human being in terms of genetics and structure and anatomy, fine. But a gorilla is more befitting to compare it with a bear. Who will win in a fight, a gorilla or a bear? Probably the bear will win, actually. The human being is on a completely different level in all these spheres.
I think it's also important to know that sometimes these two things get conflated. One is change over time, which is Sabur calls it basic evolution. And we got no issue with this at all. There's evidence of things changing over time, antibiotic resistance and stuff like that. There's no issue for that whatsoever. However, Darwinian evolution has two main aspects, which is natural selection and tree of life. And these two things have issues.
And moreover, I'll say something else. I'll say something very important on this matter, which is that human beings, in the Quran, we believe in Isa, Jesus, just like Christians believe in Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I said I believe in Jesus, if someone saw Jesus, what would they think of Jesus? They would think of Jesus as a man who has a mother and a father. But Islam tells us that he has a mother but no father. But that's scientifically really is impossible in many ways. Or it's not impossible, but beyond theory or beyond the theory of Darwinian evolution. So the fact that Jesus does not have a father is something which goes beyond the pale of Darwinian theory, because we assume that there's, or even biology, right? Because 23 chromosomes on each side, we need a mother and a father. But Adam has no mother and no father, and the Quran says this: إن مثل عيسى عند الله كمثل آدم خلقه من تراب ثم قال له كن فيكون. That the similitude of Adam is like Jesus, that he created from dust and said be, and he was. If that is the case, if we can believe that Jesus with no mother was created, even though a Darwinian would say that this person required a mother and a father, then we believe in this kind of metaphysical interaction or intervention which caused something which is otherwise part of a chain of something which we'd see as connected otherwise. That wouldn't be. Do you see the point?
Next, homosexuality. What does Islam say about homosexuality? Is it intolerant to homosexuality? Is Islam backwards and barbarian because it doesn't tolerate homosexuality?
Well, obviously not. The thing is, homosexuality is defined as like same-sex attraction, okay?
And I think homosexuality nowadays is classed in LGBT, so we just put it all under one umbrella.
Yeah, okay. I mean, but homosexuality is a sexual preference. It can be a romantic one as well. And so what Islam has to say about that is very clear, that we believe that sexual activity should be done between male and female, you know.
This way,
between male and female, in order to propagate the species, in order to... and we believe also that there's good evidence to show that a male and a female in a nuclear family produce the best, most stable environments, both sociologically and, quite frankly, biologically as well, in the sense that it limits the spread of infectious diseases. If you look at all of if you look at all the data, homosexuals in particular are most likely to spread certain disease, or to be infected with certain diseases, and this is something which is clear cut. And so for all the different reasons, homosexuality is forbidden in Islam. It's an aberration to the moral framework of Islam, and so we don't believe in it. In fact, we have stories in the Quran and narratives which very clearly...
but bear in mind also, bro, that these are students in schools, isn't it? They say this sort of stuff. Like, some people have said, I disagree with it. They say, no, but you must respect them. And they go, no, I don't. And then they get kicked out.
Okay.
So
no, but okay. But what we're doing is we're spelling out the Islamic stance first. This is not our stance. This is the Islamic stance. Okay. Just like this, it's not dissimilar from the say certain Christian people who would have the same stances.
Jewish,
and Orthodox Jews, and in fact, quite frankly, Sikhs as well. Many other people from different religions. It's not just Muslims, Christians, and Jews. Many other people from different religions, and some non-religious people as well. We have to remember, some non-religious people find homosexuality an aberration to their own morality. So people have to accept that there is a difference in opinion here. And who do we mean by people? The dominant population has to accept that there is a difference in opinion in the way that homosexuality is seen, just as they accept a difference of opinion the way that eating meat is seen. Okay, now I might have some vegetarian friends or acquaintances or colleagues or student friends in the school, just like I might have some homosexuals that fit the same profile in the school or in the university or so on. He might be a meat eater, I might be a vegetarian, or vice versa. Yeah. Now the thing is, we both disagree on the morality of eating meat. Yet we are able to respect one another, we tolerate one another, we're able to understand that I have my way and he has his. Just being against something doesn't mean being intolerant or disrespectful or unhospitable.
That's a very good point.
To those who carry an opposite belief.
So just because you disagree with something,
it doesn't mean that you're going to treat the people that carry those beliefs in a manner that would be disrespectful or unhospitable, or so on. It doesn't mean
the
that.
Media, they disagree with a lot of things about Islam. However, are we going to accuse them of being Islamophobic?
Exactly. So just as schools and teachers and people in the universities that have position of responsibility and decision makers, quite frankly, as well, just as they allow homosexuals to be free in those environments, they should also allow Muslims, Christians, Jews, and others who believe that homosexuality is false. They should also allow them to be free in their own beliefs regarding homosexuality, Because if they don't, then that means that they're being selective and discriminatory.
Yeah.
And that is the narrative that needs to be put forward. That we as Muslims cannot believe this because of our religion, and if you don't allow us not to believe this, you're discriminating against us on the basis of religion.
And curbing our freedom of speech.
And in fact, in terms of the law, there's two issues here. There's a freedom of speech issue, which is human rights, which we're not saying we believe in fully, but according to the law, we're talking, this is a legalistic issue here.
Law of the land.
Yeah, and because the Human Rights became an act, the Human Rights Act 1998 in the UK. And then you have another issue as well, which is that it's against the Equalities Act. Because if that can be seen as if you're discriminatory against a student, a pupil, or a colleague or a work person because they have certain views which are different from yours, and these views are on the basis of religion, and they're not something which are harmful to society or something like that, which are terrorism or something like that. In that case, if you're trying to curb or stop or discriminate against those people on that basis, there's a good legal basis there for you being discriminatory, and potentially that legal action should be taken against you. So we need to start fighting back we need to know what the law is. We need to start fighting back in our lands.
Like with like, yeah.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, why should we be the one bullied? Why should we be the one walking in eggshells thinking that they're going to put our kids in prevent programs and social services because we believe in a morality which is distinct and different from theirs? We have freedoms as Muslims in this country, just like Jews and Christians have freedoms, and we should not be afraid to basically live those freedoms.
Facts right there.
That's right.
All right, so in some of these schools, like we had these grammar schools, sometimes they ask questions in very crafty ways. Like one of the question is, how do you feel about the fact that there is evidence of other religions other than your own?
That's for us. In fact, the fact that there's evidence for other religions other than our own is confirmatory of our own religion. Because
it is?
Yeah, because we believe in previous dispensations which have been corrupted. So that Christianity has some evidence and Judaism has some evidence is in fact an evidence for Islam. Because we don't say that Judaism and Christianity are false.
You just flip that.
Yeah, we don't have a all size fits all a policy on truth. We don't say that we have a monopoly on it either. We're saying that we have the truth, yes, the full truth and nothing but it. But that other people have aspects of it as well. Now the ideologies have aspects of the truth. Almost every single human ideology, including feminism and communism, they have some true things to say.
Wow.
So the fact that some people have some true things to say is nothing remarkable in the human condition. And in fact, if it relates to other religions, then all this does is it shows us the extent to which our own religion is all comprehensive in being able to describe other religious traditions as being a mixture of truth and falsehood.
How do you feel that that Big Bang, you've answered evolution, but how do you feel that theories like the Big Bang have evidence to support it?
I don't think the Big Bang is in any way, shape or form, even to a degree of 1% or 0.1% threatening of our theses. In fact, if anything, people have been trying to keep away from the Big Bang from the atheist circles now, especially on because of the proliferation of the intellectual arguments.
What's proliferation?
The spreading of certain arguments, intellectual arguments, for the proof of God's existence, including, but not limited to, William Lane Craig's kind of Kalam cosmological argument that everything, it's actually from Al-Ghazali, but he made it popular in the West, which is that everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. And the second premise, that the universe began to exist, the Big Bang actually confirms that. So if anything, I think that there's been resistance from the atheist and new atheist side to try and get rid of the Big Bang, if you like.
Like Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, brilliant, good example, great example. A brief history of time. He didn't believe, him and Penrose recently as well. Roger Penrose, he recently wrote a paper going against what he earlier said about the Big Bang, and he believes in some kind of a cyclical model now.
Even Krauss.
He's nothing. He doesn't exist. He's not an authority. But I'm talking about people that are actual authorities. Like, to be fair, Hawkins and Penrose are serious authorities, but Krauss is nothing.
This one's a bit obvious, but it gets thrown around a lot. BBC Question Time. Anytime there's a natural disaster, it gets debated. Anytime something happens and people die, constantly, I've heard it growing up, all the time get debated. If there is a God, why does he allow evil?
All right, a simple way of answering this question is
And this could be somebody saying, yeah, that person died, that child died, oh, that person got cancer, oh, in nature, there's this animal, it does this and it does that. Okay, so if there's a God, why is it evil?
okay. Well, first of all, the onus or the burden of proof is upon the one that's making the claim. So the person who's making the claim that the evil and God are incompatible with each other has to show how and why. Because if you're saying that there cannot be a God without evil, and there cannot be evil without there cannot be evil with a God, then you have to explain why those two things are incompatible. Now, in the Hellenistic age, there was an attempt by someone called Epicurus to do that, but that has been seen as to be redundant because it only has two attributes of God that is kind of mentioned, that God is omnipotent, is good. And if he's omnipotent, then why is he letting the good in the world? And if he's good, then why is he not change? Why cannot he change the evil in the world? So they try and play, or Epicurus tried to play off with those two kinds of attributes. But in reality, no one, I mean, classical theists and so on, we don't believe in and beyond. So obviously, those who believe in multiple attributes of God, like we do, we don't believe in God with only two attributes. We believe in a God with many attributes, including but not limited to the knowledge attribute, the wisdom attribute, the pardoning attribute, the forgiving attribute, the justice attribute, the power attribute, and so on and so forth. So God has all those attributes. It doesn't just have one attribute. And so, why does God allow X and Y if he's omnipotent and good? Is because he's also wise. And our definition of wisdom is appropriacy. Anything which is appropriate, which fits the knowledge of God, is something which is wise. In Arabic, it's what our shaykh fi makanihi sahih, putting something in its rightful place. Dhulm, interestingly enough, which is oppression, is the opposite of that, which is putting something in its unrightful place. If I were to put, the chair on top of the table instead of underneath it, for example, that would be seen linguistically as a kind of dhulm or oppression. So wisdom is putting something in its right place. Now, as Hamza also says, we see the pixel, but we don't see the picture. There was a very interesting, I think it was some Indic religion or some like Eastern tradition story, and I think this would kind of clarify the point a little bit more. There's a story of three blind men that saw the elephant. I'm not sure if have you seen this?
It's a Buddhist tale, yeah.
Is it a Buddhist tale? Yeah. So one blind man, he touched the trunk of the elephant, one the ear, one the tail of the elephant, and all three blind men were called back and asked, "What about the elephant?" And one said it's a very hairy creature, the other said very long, and the other said it's a very wavy creature.
One said it's a snake, and the other one.
Yeah, exactly, because they didn't see the full picture of the other. Likewise, just because we see certain evil things in our life, we can't see the full picture of it. We can't see why is it the case, why it's happening to me.
It's also a logical fallacy, isn't it? Argument from ignorance. That just you don't know.
It's a fallacy of incredulity. It's an argument from ignorance. It's actually a poor argument to begin with. So much so, let's be honest with you, even atheists like William Rowe and others have declared this to be an intellectually bankrupt argument.
William Rowe, yeah.
I think that's his name, yeah. Many atheists now, they don't really use this as much, I mean, to be fair, because it's such a weak argument. But when I was reading Graham Oppy's book, which is Arguments for God's Existence, very pathetic and small book, weak in its contents, and not really persuasive at all. But he basically was arguing against the arguments for God's existence, and he only really offered one argument against God, which is the argument from evil, or the problem of evil. And it shows you how out of ammunition that atheists, and Graham Oppy really and truly in terms of atheist intellectuals is probably seen as the number one, even though he's not as charismatic as the new atheists, for example, but he's more intellectually rigorous. And so for that reason, for example, this is the one bullet they can try and shoot you with, and it's not even made out of steel. A student going to school, and this is a good place to kind of wrap up here, I think, yeah? A student going to school, and when the teacher asks her question, you ask a counter question. So it's a very good question, but I think we need to answer this question in order to proceed with yours, which is, why is there something rather than nothing? Why is the universe fine-tuned for human life?
What if they ask, why is there something rather than nothing, and they give like a waffly answer?
It's not. There is no waffly answer. Why is there something rather than nothing? Whatever answer you give, you're going to have to start conceding to the fact that there's a foundational thing which started the entire universe. If you don't concede to that, you will not be able to answer this question in any way in intellectually satisfying way. That's the first thing. Secondarily, I'll say, the second question: why is the universe fine-tuned for human life? Do we think that we're here without guidance? أَيَحْسَبُ الْإِنسَانُ أَنْ يُتْرَكَ سُدًى? Do the human beings think that they will be left aimless? Is this a game? Is this life just us doing things? Is that what it is? And these questions, one after the other, they will trigger, hopefully, your teachers, your colleagues, your friends, your students into belief. And if not, then they may be a lost cause, quite frankly. They may be a lost cause. There was a very interesting lecture by someone called Khalid Yassin, preacher from a long time ago. And it did so well in converting person after person after person. It's called The Purpose of Life.
Yeah.
Do you remember that one?
I do, yeah.
Bro, it's because it's a classic, because it's the question that is talking about purpose is so powerful, bro. It's one of the most powerful things you can do.
Bro, I genuinely think we have saved a lot of people.
Wow.
Inshallah, through this video.
Inshallah.
Yeah. So it's one video. Share it with anyone and everyone that's a student, that's a teacher, that's an alien, that's a, Homo
erectus.
Yeah, Homo erectus. You like that one? You were happy when you said that. All right, let's leave it there, guys. Until next time.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.